Bye! My name is Josh Miller. I own Riverstone Kennels, and I've been training gun dogs for more than 16 years. I have field trialed, I've hunt tested, but at the end of the day, I'm a duck hunter. You might find that the duck in our DUK Dogs podcast is spelled uniquely. The UK stands for my British Labs. I love my British Labs. I love what they offer me, both as a part of my family and the high motor in the field. As you're going to find, I have some pretty special dogs. Follow along in our podcast series here as we talk about both in the field hunting and in the field training situations that will hopefully help you progress with your dog at home. Welcome back to another episode of DUK Dogs. I'm your host, Josh Miller. And before we get going here, let's be sure to thank all of our fantastic partners. Thank you to Eukanuba. Eukanuba Premium Performance Sport 3020 is the blend of food that I feed my dogs now as we are into that heavy training season and then into the hunting season. They also have 2616 and the Puppy Pro, which we absolutely love for our young developing puppies. www.eukanuba.com. Thank you to Sitka Gear. Sitka Gear is your premium option for all of your outdoor clothing, not only during hunting season, which of course is when we think of Sitka, but also for your everyday wear. I wear it almost every day while I'm out training. It keeps me comfortable for longer, protects me from the sun. It's all really good stuff. www.sitkagear.com. Thank you to Lucky Duck. Lucky Duck is your 5-star crash test rated kennel, both in the intermediate and the large sizes. And as you go into the hunting season, be sure that your dog is comfortable with the kennel cot. Also, the fan as we head into those summer months. Be sure to go check it out, www.luckyduck.com. Also, thank you to Gun Dog Supply. Gun Dog Supply is your one-stop shop for all of your hunting and training needs. So whether it's poppers, whether it's dummies, bumpers, whether it's whatever you need, go check out www.gundogsupply.com. Also, thank you to Kent Cartridge. Kent is the shotgun shell of choice for us during the season, but then during training, as we need blanks, we also use the Kent blanks. So go check them out if you're looking for any blanks that you need for your training to make sure you're not shooting those live rounds and you're staying safe. Last but not least, thank you to Retriever Roadmap. Retriever Roadmap is your premium online option for training your own dog at home. And now, probably my absolute favorite part of the group is the strike teams, which are the training groups that get together. I'm having more fun with these get-together training days than, quite honestly, I even thought that I would. So go check it out, www.retrieverroadmap.com, and come join all the fun. Well, I hope everybody's off to a fantastic start to your week, if it is the start of your week. If it's not, hope you're having a great day. I am actually really excited because I am heading out for a trip tomorrow. I'll tell you a little bit about that, and I have a couple stories to share with you today in the hopes that it will help you with your dog as you kind of go through some of your training season here, especially for those of you starting the season out. One thing I do want to mention, if you guys are looking at getting Retriever Roadmap, use that DD100, DD for Duck Dogs, D100 will get you $100 off that sign-up fee. And like I said, you guys, these strike teams have been fun. The community has been fun. It's a really cool group. So if you're looking for some guidance as you go through your training season, I would highly suggest it, Retriever Roadmap. So and we have some really cool things coming down the pipeline. So stay tuned for that, especially if you remember. I actually have kind of a little tweak and announcement that I'm going to be doing here next week that will hopefully add even more value. And then I'm not going to say too much. There's just a lot of exciting things I'm excited about for that program. What am I doing this week? So I am actually, hopefully, going to knock off one of my bucket list items, which is landing a tarpon on a flat rod.
I'm really excited about this. Let me tell you about how I got this started. So one of my very good friends from overseas, actually, he's probably one of my better friends, period, or best friends, period. It's just amazing how even these long distance relationships can become so meaningful. But he's absolutely one of my best friends, and does a bunch for us. Finds the right dogs for us. I mean, just a great business partner as well, on top of a friend. But we were gonna go on a fishing trip together, and we, tomorrow is when I had always had in on my schedule with my flight to leave. Well, apparently, the U.S. has a quarantine. Did anybody even think that COVID was really still a thing? Like, I know it's a thing, right? But it's not like a thing like it was. You go into town, you wouldn't even know. Like, it's completely like it was pre-COVID, as far as I'm concerned, at least here in little old New Richmond, Wisconsin. But anyway, there's a quarantine for European residents coming into the U.S., and my buddy would have fallen into that. So it's 5 days that he would have had to quarantine, just an absolute mess. So he had to cancel at the last second, which is, I mean, it was devastating. I was really, really looking forward to spending the time together, getting to fish together, getting to hang out. We don't get to see each other, of course, very often, being that we are in two different countries. So it's really too bad. But the silver lining is, I am still going to get to go with one of our clients that is hosting me down there, and I just cannot wait. I love the salt. I love the salt water. I love the ocean. I love the flats fishing. I mean, it's just like, I love everything about that. So I'm ecstatic. I hate that my buddy's not going to be with me, but I'm ecstatic to get down there. But that's why I wanted to make sure that I got this podcast in here today. So before I get going on this, I want to talk about last episode. So last episode, I believe it was last episode, if not the one before, I talked about my Waffle House experience. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and watch that. I can't remember exactly what we had called that. If you give me 1 second here, I could absolutely look it up. But it was just in, oh my gosh, here. So if we go into our DUK Dogs folder here, go back, I think it was last. Yeah, I think it was the 107. I think it was in the Find Your Dog's Game episode. I talked about an encounter that I had at a Waffle House where, I'm going to give you the long story short, that I just felt the urge to pay for everyone's tab, and there was an extremely meaningful interaction that I had with a lady and her son as a result of that gesture. Well, it's just amazing how this community, and this specifically the DUK Dogs following, interacts. I won't use her last name, Rick, but I have a gentleman named Rick that has sent me messages, and we actually have email back and forth, especially if there's specific topics that I speak on that Rick would like to kind of shed some light on. I think he has a very profound knowledge on a lot of the topics I talk about. He's a business leader, a business coach, and does a lot of these mental type of training. So I think we think very similarly in that aspect. He had sent me a $100 bill with a note of continue to pay it forward. And I just think that is so awesome. And so, Rick, I will absolutely do that. I will let you know what I do with that. I'll make sure to write you on that. But I mean, it's just like it was. You got to go listen to the story if you haven't heard it. But if you have heard it, who would have ever thought that one little gesture would have impacted the people it did initially, the ripple effect that it is now? Like, who knows that family, it has gone and done right from there. But even just for me, this ripple effect, like Rick, like, my goodness, you have no idea how much that meant to me to open up that note. And it's a pretty incredible thing. So I'm really grateful for that. And hopefully that story impacted you in some way too. I'd love to hear about it if it did, just because it seems to be one of those stories that has kind of resonated and hit people. But thank you, Rick. I will absolutely pay that forward, and I will absolutely let you know what I do with that. I'll find the right time for it. So I want to give you guys a little story. I have a couple stories I want to share with you guys here today, because I feel like there's some really neat things that I can share that kind of been like percolating like that little popcorn in my head, right? And the first one actually comes from a story that I had a gentleman out to the kennel here late last week, and he was an Air Force pilot. Really interesting. So, of course, with my son, who's 2.5, obsessed with the new Top Gun movie. He thought this guy was just the coolest guy ever, which was awesome. He got to, he thought he was talking to Maverick, right? He was pretty excited about the whole thing. But he's listening to the podcast, and I'm sure, Jason, you're probably listening now. But I want to tell the story that you had talked to me about, which was, I feel like, very impactful. I'm going to tell you what I've watched and witnessed and felt here since, we talked about that. So, when Jason came over the kennel, we had talked. Of course, he kind of gives me his background. Air Force pilot, probably has some wicked cool stories from that. But he had talked about how he enjoyed how much we talk about the mindset, how much we talk about mental preparation, how much we talk about how you respond to something. And one thing that he had mentioned that I don't use maybe a ton of, but I talk about a lot, maybe inadvertently, is perspective. I'd like to dig in a little bit of what he meant by that. So, he had said that in training and how they approach it day to day, perspective is everything. So, how you communicate something, or how you look at something. Okay, so he had talked about specifically when they start flying low-level courses, and if you were to tell a pilot, don't hit that obstacle, they're going to be focused on that obstacle, and so they're going to hit it, right? And so how you word something and how you teach something oftentimes can be the difference in success and failure. Talked about relation to kids, right? So you don't say something like, don't. I'm trying to use the example that he used. I think he used the example. You don't say, don't eat on the couch. Rather, you say, eat at the table. Like, show them what it is you want rather than reprimanding them for just a little bit of a word twist. You mean the same thing, right? And so I thought that was really interesting. Perspective, I guess we don't maybe focus on talking more. Maybe I need to talk about it more, because it's a lot of what we're doing. But let me show you how this hit me. I think that was on a Friday, so Monday of this week. So this morning, I talked to a gentleman that was really struggling with his new puppy. I think he said she's 12 weeks old. And this is one of those situations where puppy's not from us, but somebody's just calling, just hoping to get some advice, right? And so when I talked to this gentleman, he was worried about that the puppy just kept going to the bathroom in the house. Kept reprimanding the puppy. He's like, I don't know if there's a different way that I can tell her no, different way. And that was the word that triggered me. That was the phrase. I don't know if there's a different way I can tell her no. So perspective, right? So in my mind, I immediately went to, well, have you told her what she's supposed to do? He's like, well, what do you mean? And I said, have you showed her these areas outside that you want her to go? He's like, well, she's gone outside and like I've told her she's doing good. And so what I challenge him to do is for this week, just focus on that positive. Focus on where you want, because you can't expect the puppy to correct something if they don't know how to correct it, right? Show them where they're supposed to go. Like for me, everybody wants to have these mega crates for these puppies. Like, they have to have this Taj Mahal mansion that they can, well, more times than not, if a puppy has a place like that to live, they're going to use one end of that kennel or crate to use as the bathroom, and they will use the other end to live in. Most puppies, especially most of these intelligent puppies, they don't want to be living in their own filth if they can help it. So they're going to avoid it. So you get these small kennels. It's going to encourage them to hold it, and then don't give them the opportunity to do it wrong. Take them out of the kennel, carry them, bring them out to the backyard, boom, right down. Go to the bathroom, good, throw a party, hoorah, praise, look like a complete goofball to your neighbor, pick them up, bring them inside. You do that enough times, now the puppy knows what they're supposed to do right. Then when you make the correction, they know what they're doing wrong. right? Something as little, like, to me, that perspective story stuck with me to where I'm like, okay, let's change the verbiage up here a little bit in a teaching moment, right? I thought that was really, really kind of a neat way. So think about that as you're going into, this training season. Perspective. How are you looking at things? How are you, like, I can tell you, your body language, you probably speak more to your dog through your body than what you even think, right? So we have someone just the other week that said, like, we go to a hunt test and the dog is just not the same dog. On edge, jacked up, like, what do I do? First off, are you the same person? The answer is likely no. You're jacked up, you're edgy, you're case. You have to understand that's a factor of this. Now let's work backwards and see what we can do to best prepare them. Like, a little thing, perspective, like, it's not all about what we think it is. So I want to tell you guys a little story too about the strike team meeting that we had the other week. And one of the things that I feel like came of that, from a teaching moment. But before I do that, I'm going to cover one more topic, because I just had a phone call this morning with a company that wants to do some training tips over the summer, which is great. I think training tips are a good thing. Let's communicate to more people. Let's give some more knowledge. I'm all for it, right? And they asked me a question, which sometimes these questions I don't always think about. It's always interesting to me what my answer is, especially if it's an impromptu, what does this go? And the question was, what is the number one comment you hear from people when they pick up puppies in regards to their new puppy? And my answer was Whitney would likely have a different answer than me, but my answer, of course, everyone always talks to me about the training. So mine comes from a training standpoint. So the answer is, the number one thing that people say when they pick up their puppy is, I just don't want to screw it up. Like, isn't that interesting? Like, especially from a perspective side, what we just talked about. Like, we're already talking about screwing it up. We've owned the puppy for 10 minutes. We're already talking about screwing it up. Well, it's an interesting thing that oftentimes, we put this weight on ourselves about this. And here's why I think this is so interesting. As I watch people and I watch them grow up with their dog and I listen to them as they develop, I see that sometimes people are so fearful of screwing up that they actually hold themselves and their dogs back from ever developing in the first place. Okay, so what I'm going to use a couple examples. Okay, I have a client of mine that he's not a big hunter. I mean, he hunts, but he's always hunting with groups. Okay, always hunting with different people. And I think just as a result of that, he probably doesn't want to put his dog in those hunts very often, because I think he's nervous of the dog underperforming. This dog has run hunt tests, has titles. The dog I know is capable because I've done a lot of work with the dog myself, but the guy just continues to have reason after reason why he doesn't go and hunt. And so he just dropped the dog off here a couple months ago and was talking about him, and he's like, he's got plenty of years ahead of him, left to hunt. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, how old is he? He's like, he turns 4 next month. I'm like, he's 4. Like, what are you talking about? He's got plenty of years ahead of him to hunt. Like, that's what I mean. You're so afraid of screwing up that you're actually not going to put your dog in the situation to go be successful. Isn't that interesting? From a training standpoint, one of the things that I find too is people want this to look so linear and so clean and so ABC that when it doesn't, there's a panic. Okay. Talked to a guy here probably a couple weeks ago now, and I've had one dog off the top of my head, maybe 2. I want to say 2 for some reason, but I know one for sure that has gone through this. That this dog did not want to pick up rubber bumpers for whatever reason. Pick up canvas, pick up anything else. Pick up birds, of course, but would not pick up rubber bumpers. So this guy called me hoping that I would have kind of a magic idea about this. This dog had been to 2 different trainers to go through force fetching, would do it if he was standing there being forced to, but he's trying to do pile work and he's trying to go through advanced work, and the dog won't touch rubber bumpers. Will run up to it 100 miles an hour, will see it, nose it, and then start looking for something else. Okay? And so he's telling me this story, and I'm just like, gosh, like, you spent a lot of time on this. 2 different trainers. Obviously, you've gone through a lot of this yourself, right? So, like, there's this saying that came to my mind as he's talking. I told him this, and that saying is, "Don't beat your head against a wall, hoping for it to turn into a door." You know, like that was just one of those moments to me. That's like, why do you keep hitting your head against this wall? If the dog doesn't want to do it, and absolutely, like, yeah, I would love the dog to pick up rubber bumpers. Makes life easier. Should do it if you look at, like, from a training standpoint, especially the training that he's been through, having gone through force fetch twice with 2 trainers and whatever work he had done with them. Yeah, should do it, but he's not. So what are you going to do? You're going to beat your head against this wall for the next year to 2 years until you finally get fed up with it? Like, make a pivot, make a change. Go put canvas bumpers out there. Do something. Like, go be successful. Find a different route. This doesn't have to look the same. These are those moments that I just get a little frustrated. Like, that's the whole purpose behind Retriever Roadmap. Is as we continue to develop this and continue to bring, these new ideas and new methods, new everything. Not all of these are going to be the way that I necessarily do things, but there's value in knowing multiple ways of doing something, because whether you use it or not, it's good to know what's there. And then in the situation like this that you need it, here's a pivot, here's another route, here's another way to go. It makes no sense to me why there's this thought of, like, I have to do it this way, but I get it. I really do, because for me, I am in the learning and student mode of my roping, right? So if you're new to this, I tie down rope. It's a big hobby of mine, but I'm still new to this. And, it's only my 2nd year doing this. So I'm trying to absorb everything. So when somebody tells me, I just had this morning with somebody. What was it about? I was thinking, so I'm more and more finding myself that I am putting myself in someone else's shoes, because I find myself as a consumer, if you will, of this knowledge. So I think it was something about my hand, as far as, like, how I put my hand down when I send a dog. And the truth of the matter is, I can tell you my way of doing it, but, like, it doesn't, it is up to you. This is what works for me, but is up to you. Now, I get from a consumer standpoint, I hate that answer. When I ask one of my mentors or people that I look to as far as, hey, give me some guidance, why do you swing this way, or why do you start in the box like this? And it's like, well, to each their own. Well, that doesn't help me. That doesn't answer my question, right? Give me some ideas so I know whether I want to use it or not. So I get it. I really do. But there's so much that is up for, I don't want to say up for interpretation, because there's definitely that on a negative side as well. But there's so much of this where I think there's a thought of, like, it has to be this way. This is my biggest bugaboo, my biggest gripe with books and DVDs and things like that they're static, right? You press print and that's what they are. Because things are ever changing, they're ever evolving, and you need to have more than one way of doing it in order to get to your end goal. For 100 dogs, like, you take one dog through it, great. But you take 101 dogs through it, I promise you, they will not all be the same. So when you get that hiccup, you want to have someone to pivot to, somewhere to go with it, right? I just think that's such an interesting, like, that bumper thing. If you might be sitting there going, gosh, like, I never would have thought that'd be an issue. right? Or I would never allow my dog to have that issue. Well, guess what? Like I truly believe, I talked to the guy. He's done his research. This is his third dog. Been to 2 different trainers for 4. Like, he has done the work, and he's still having the issue. So the question is, where do you go from here? This is where each individual is so different. Each situation is so different. I find it fascinating to dig into this stuff. But I'm going to tell you the story from the strike team meeting. So, good friend of mine had came to the training, but he came late. And he's a wrestling coach, had wrestling practice with the kids. We went through our training. Now, with this training, the hardest part for me is I conduct these team training days. Is I have everything from a 6-month-old puppy to a 5-year-old finished dog and everything in between. So how do you set up a day where everybody gets production, everybody gets legitimate work in it, everybody makes progress? Very difficult. It takes a lot of planning. But we were towards the end of the day, and my buddy comes in with his dog. And now we have worked up to this point. We had a dog, I think I maybe talked about this a little bit in the last episode. We had a dog that started that day jumping, goofy, all over the place, and had never picked up a bird or a retrieve that was not hand thrown. All of a sudden run 140-yard marks, completely steady, stepping on the marks. Like, incredible progress in 3-4 hours, whatever it was. Incredible. Super fun to watch. My buddy has a more advanced dog. Handles, does everything. But he is still an inexperienced handler, learning and developing how to handle. Okay, so he comes up to the line. Now, this is the same setup that young puppy was stepping on these marks, 140-yard mark. Okay, comes up, sits on the bucket, ready, and he is watching the bumper. Okay, it's being thrown out of the same launcher in the same exact spot every time. He's watching the bumper. Boom. Goes up. Now I'm behind him. I'm watching the dog. As that bumper went up in the air, there was a bird, robin-ish kind of a bird, that went left to right. Basically, if you're looking at a clock and flying towards 3 o'clock. So what did that dog's head do? Looking at 3 o'clock. Now, handler in this case, if he's watching and reading the dog, he'd see it. But he didn't, right? So a big send. I'm going to use a different name just so hopefully I don't embarrass my buddy. But I'm just going to say Louie. So Louie, right to 3 o'clock. It's no. Come here. Gets him back, reeled in. Now, remember, Louie thought he was doing this right. He thought he had a mark. He thought he knew what was going on. Obviously didn't. Back to his side. Same thing. Boom. And same friggin' thing, except the robin in this scenario is going right to left and is more at like 10 o'clock, flying away. Same thing. Louie, toward 10 o'clock. No. We're running towards 12 in this picture that I'm trying to paint. Bring him back. Okay. Now, when he comes back this time, I'm like, hey, read the dog. He's like, yeah. So he looks down at him, gives me the thumbs up to launch. Boom. Again, watching the bumper, not the dog. The dog doesn't see it. Now, think about the dog. He's probably frazzled at this point. Looks right back at 10 o'clock because that's where he last recalls he thinks he saw something go. Louie, right to 10. Tweet. Whistle stop. Dog sits. He gives a right angle back cast, and that sucker carried that cast 100 yards, stepped on that mark. Well, it wasn't a mark to him, but that's what we were throwing. And I was like, good grief. He comes back, and you can tell my buddy's a little frazzled. I'm like, hey, like, you happy with that? He's like, no. He's like, I was like, you happy with the cast? He's like, oh, yeah. Yeah, that was great. But he shouldn't have been. Okay, time out. I'm like, you need to be reading the dog here. Okay? So, comes up. Now, what's so neat about the group setting is that everybody's standing there watching this. So everybody else is seeing what I'm seeing. because we're detached from it. We're separated. We can see it from a distance. We all see it happening. Such a great learning opportunity for everybody else, myself included, reading the dog. So he comes up, and this dog is geeked out of his mind now. He's looking left. He's looking right. He's going, where in the world is this going? You can tell he's just jacked up. And I said, hey, walk away. So he heels him, walks him away, comes back. I'm like, run this as a blind. Okay. He goes, okay. Because now we have multiple bumpers out in this area, right? He's like, dead. Dog bows up, zeroes in, puts his hand down, back. This sucker, straight as an arrow, right to it. So he comes back. I'm like, okay, so what we're seeing here is it's not the dog not having the capability. There's something that we're doing as a handler, right? And I turned around and said, does everybody see what's going on here? And I was like, yep. Read the dog, especially in a situation like this, right? The luxury that we have during training season is that we can slow things down. We know how things are going to play out, which means all of our attention can go on the dog at reading the situation and how we make our dog successful. In the hunting situation, what is so difficult is the unknown of boom, boom, boom. I need to do my job marking because I don't know where these birds are going to fall. So I'm trying to watch, I'm trying to mark, I'm trying to remember, I'm trying to do all this stuff. Oh, by the way, if the dog's doing something right now, there's no way you're seeing it. Use this time. Launch where your eye should be, not downfield, right here. That way, if the dog does something, you can make the correction. You can put them in the situation to succeed. I'm going to challenge you on the perspective part. I thought that was so astute. I really appreciate that. Perspective. Everything is perspective. Really interesting. If you're in the Western Wisconsin, or I don't care if you're from Texas, you can come up to this. I know that we're having a strike team meeting, training day at the Retriever Roadmap. You have to be a Retriever Roadmap member to be a part of it. But this coming Saturday, the 6th of May, and the following, the 13th of May, and I think we might have a week or two off because of scheduling situations. And then the fall, I'm really torn on if we do the following. His muskie opener here in Wisconsin is going to kill me if I don't know. I can still fish a little bit in the morning. We'll figure that part out. Anyway, hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your week. I hope in the worst way I can come to you and tell you the story of how I caught and landed a tarpon on the fly rod. I'm just going to enjoy the time in the sun, going to enjoy the camaraderie with my client, and I really am looking forward to that time. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk with you soon.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram, leave us a review on iTunes, and a special thank you to DUK, because without them, we couldn't do what we do here, bringing this information to you.